Hello everybody, this is Sherry at djsundry.blogspot.com, and today is a Getting Cricky Simply Sunday Challenge. The theme for today is Easter, and we're really excited that you could join us. Now, Easter is one of my favorite holidays of the year. I really can't decide if I like Christmas or Easter more, because Easter and Christmas go hand in hand, because at Christmas time we celebrate that Jesus was born, and at Easter time we celebrate that he rose from the grave and is preparing a home for those who trust him as Savior. So today I want to make an Easter card, and so let me show you some things that I made. Now, the first thing I've pulled here is I have some iris colored ribbon, and this is some that I got from Gifts International months ago. I also have used the wild card cartridge. Now, I only used it for one little thing. On page 80 there's a sentiment right here, and it says, "A lovely Easter to you." And all I wanted was the word Easter, so I actually cut it quite large. I cut it at 5.5 inches, and then got rid of the Easter, everything but the word Easter. I'm also using my Spellbinder Shapeabilities. I'm using the largest octagon and the second one down, and I'll show you where in a minute. And I believe I also used this one right here, and I'll show you those in a minute. I'm using Dusty Concord Distress Ink. I'm using the Prima Flowers. If you saw my video that I posted yesterday, you saw that I just recently picked up these flowers, and these have 3 different lavender color of flowers, and I use 1 flower from each color. And then I'm using the Chateau Lavender Matte Stack, and this is the first time I've used this matte stack, and I absolutely love it. This is one of the papers that I'm using, and it's very glittery. And then I just chose some various other papers, all from this matte stack, and it's just a beautiful matte stack, sized perfectly for cards. My card base is out of vintage cream cardstock from Paper Tray Ink, and then any of the cream cardstock that I used I also took from this vintage cream from Paper Tray Ink. Now, this is the first time that I've actually used this cardstock, and it is a definite winner. I love the weight. It just really holds a nice shape to the card, and I'm really excited about it. Now, I'm using 2 stamp sets from K. Andrew Designs. The first one that I'm going to be using is Scripture Sayings, and from this I'm using "For we live by faith, not by sight," 2 Corinthians 5:7, and that will be on the inside of my card. And then I'm also using Halloween, or Fall-O-Ween, sorry, for the word blessings, and that's all that I wanted from this set. So let's get started. This is actually going to go together very quickly. I've done some prep work. The first thing that I did is I got a piece of the vintage cream cardstock, and I cut it at 5.5 inches. And then I scored it at 4 1/4, so I have a 5.5 inch tall card by 4 1/4 inch wide piece of paper. Then the next thing that I got from that Chateau Matte stack was this green, and I just wanted just a tiny hint of the cream to show, so I cut the green at 4 1/8 inches wide by 5 1/4 inches tall, because I just barely wanted it to show. I don't want much of the cream. You know, the cream's my solid, it's my anchor color, but I just want it to anchor and not be screaming cream to us. So let's anchor that down just like that. Now I'm going to stop right there and go to the inside of the card. From the same matte stack, I cut another piece. This one I actually cut a little bit better. I like the size that I cut this one. It's 4 1/8 inches wide by 5 3/8 inches tall, and I wish that's what I had cut my green at. I wish I would have given that extra 1/8 of an inch on the green for the outside, but it's still pretty, and it will still work. So this is going to be the inside of my card. If you've watched my videos, you know that I really like to have the inside of the card as finished as I can when I have time. And this actually is such a simple process that I have time. Now remember I said that I used the Spellbinders octagon shapes, and I cut, this is the largest one, and I cut out of the lavender, and it's, I don't know how well the camera picks it up, but it's actually a lavender polka dot. And then I cut another cream colored one, and I'm going to put those together first, put the octagons together, and then we'll adhere it on the inside. And the reason I did the octagon is because that is carrying out the accent shape that I'm putting on the outside of the card. So I just am going to center those on each other. And you'll notice here, this is where I stamped my inside sentiment. For we live by faith, not by sight, 2 Corinthians 5:7. And I stamped that in Dusty Concord, and then I very, very lightly inked around the edges with the same color. I didn't want much of a contrast, but I did want a little bit of a contrast. So let's just get that on, and that will finish off the inside of the card. Now this is the first time I've used Spellbinders. It's fairly new to me, but they were on clearance at Joann's, and I've been wanting to try them, and I thought what better time to get them than when they're on clearance. So I'm just going to center that. Now you notice it doesn't completely fill the space, and it doesn't leave a lot of room for me to write a message to my recipient. But for this particular card, I don't plan to write a long message, and so it provided plenty, and it just kind of gives that inside a finished look. Then let's move back to the outside, and again we have a smaller border on the sides than we do the top, but that's okay, I'm fine with that. So then I took, remember that floral paper that I showed you? Well, I took that floral paper and I trimmed it down so it would fit the front of my card. And I actually trimmed it to 2 3/4 inches tall by 3 7/8 inch across. And then I just did 2 7/8 inch tall of the cream again by 3 4 inches across, so that I would just barely have a mat. And I've already done that, and that is going to go right here. Now I don't want to adhere that because now I want to show you my Prima flowers. So I told you I took my 3 Prima flowers. Now they're on wire, and so I just kind of shaped it, and this is where I tied my bow, and I'm going to want that to go right about here, but I want the tails to be underneath. So the next thing I'm going to do is adhere my flowers, and I think what I'm going to do is just use a Scotch Quick Dry that I have, and I'm just going to put it on the back of the flowers. I'm going to be fairly generous, then I'll put some way down here low where it won't show, so that way none of my adhesive is showing on my card. And that may not pick up down there, and that's fine because that will all be covered up. So now I can go ahead and apply my mat. Let me just hold this for just a second because I really want to be sure that that top is adhered down well. That bottom piece, there we go, that'll work better. Okay, again, I'm not worried about that little white showing. First of all, it dries clear, but second of all, it won't show because it will be underneath my double matting, so you won't be able to see it at all. So let's put down our little piece right down here, and I got off just a little bit. I wanted it to be a little bit higher than that, but that's okay. Move my bow out of the way and it can come down over the top. There we go, that works. Okay. So there's the front, and we are just about done here. The next thing I want to do is I want to grab some foam squares, and this is where my sentiment comes in. I took the same purple polka dot paper that's on the inside on the octagon, remember that paper? And that's what I cut the Easter sentiment out of from the wildcard cartridge. And then I took my Dusty Concord and I stamped the word blessings from Fall-O-Ween, and again I lightly inked around the edges with the Dusty Concord, and I just want to add a little bit of extra dimension on that, so we're going to use foam dots, and I think I will use some larger ones because I don't want it to come down. Now this is not a card that I plan to mail. This is a card that I plan to kind of hand deliver or kind of leave for the person that will be receiving it. So I'm not worried about adding all this dimension with the flowers and the extra foam dots. So if you were making this card and wanted to mail it, you would have to be a little more careful about your dimension, because remember, the post office does charge extra for the dimension. I have learned that the hard way. They're pretty big sticklers about that. All right, and there we have, very simple but yet very pretty, and it says Easter blessings, and then again on the inside, for we live by faith, not by sight. So thanks for watching. Be sure and check out the rest of the design team entries for the today's Simply Sunday challenge, and then go back and enter your card and join in the fun. And thanks for watching, and have a great day. So now I want to show you one more thing that I did after I was done with the card. I decided I really didn't like the amount of cream showing at the bottom of the card, and I didn't want to trim it because the inside mat is the size I wanted. So what I did is I grabbed my distress tool and my distress Dusty Concord ink, and I don't know how well the camera picks it up, but in real life the card looks much better. I lightly inked around the edges, paying special attention to the bottom, and just went up higher than I had on any of the rest of my inking. And then that way it kind of broke up this cream mat that you can just barely see broken up by the green. So I really like the way that turned out. So whenever you don't like it, just add, sometimes if you just add that little extra dimension, it makes it just the way you want it. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.